Lord, the light of your love is shining in the midst of the darkness shining. Jesus, light of the world, shine upon us. Set us free by the truth you now bring us. Shine on me. Shine on me. Shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this land with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow. Flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let the Bible Speak. My name is Alex Meredith. I'm a minister with the Marquette Church of Christ, and I'm here to talk to you today about the human quest, or really I should say the failed human quest for divinity. Several months ago, my wife and I, or our whole family, got the opportunity to go to Dayton, Ohio. And in Dayton, Ohio, we've got some family there, and there's also the National Air Force Museum. Really extraordinary place. I got the privilege of going there several years ago, and I wanted to show my wife and show my kids, and so we decided to go. And it's even more incredible than I remembered. It's, they've got all these aircraft that kind of, it's set up to show the history of aviation, and all the way from the Wright brothers era, and even before then some, up to current technologies, future technologies still in development. They've got a whole warehouse full of Air Force Ones, and it's just really incredible. And they were, most of them, the real thing, not even models. And you could go into the cabins, walk through the cabins, see the cockpit. Just really, really neat in a lot of ways. And it was, in some way, this showcase of human innovation, right? You can see what humans are able to do when they come together, when they work together and put their minds to something. It's really fantastic. And if you think about all of the technological advancement that has happened in the last several decades, it really is mind-boggling. You think about microchips, right? I don't even have my phone on me right now, which is a little unusual, but if I did, I would show it to you. And the thing with phones, right, that we are now carrying in our pockets everywhere something that would have been considered basically a supercomputer just a matter of a few years ago, right? That's really incredible, and it has to do, and it's made possible by technological innovation. I think about vaccines, right? Anything from the COVID vaccine to the polio vaccine, and the way that it has drastically changed the way that medical field works and healthcare is done. Again, really incredible. We landed on the moon in 1969, and Elon Musk expects that we're going to have people on Mars by 2025, right? It's just so incredible. And in some sense, it's had this adverse effect of leading humans to feel this sense of omnipotence and invincibility and just hyper-independence, right? It's like this idea that we can do it all ourselves now. We don't need anybody else. And we certainly don't need God. Again, I think that's been one of the sort of unintended adverse effects. But it does feel like we've conquered everything, right? Back when I'm a big Star Trek fan, back when the original series aired in the 60s and up through the Next Generation in the 80s and 90s and some of the newer ones, Star Trek, in their, I guess you could say the Star Trek universe, they pose sort of an interesting foundation for the future of humanity. It's set just a few hundred years ahead, but by the time we apparently reach a few hundred years ahead, according to the writers, we will have solved all of the world's problems. We're beyond war. We've united together as one planet, as one people. World hunger is not a problem anymore, right? They've taken all of the problems that we currently face as a human race, And presumably, 200, 300 years from now, we will have solved them through human innovation and cooperation. At least that's the vision. But it seems a little far-fetched, doesn't it? I mean, are we able to accomplish everything? Are we able to get to a point where we know everything about the earth and now we're ready for the final frontier, you know? Now, when we were talking about this in the Marquette Church, right before the Sunday we talked about it, I went and found this rock. Now, there's nothing too special or significant about this rock. It's not even a very pretty rock. But as far as I can tell, and I don't claim to be an expert on rocks, I'm not a geologist, but I believe this is a mineral hematite. There's a lot of hematite found around the Lake Superior area, here in the Marquette area, and hematite is a mineral that is formed in the presence of water. Again, it's not all that unusual here, but scientists and biologists and people running the Mars rover program were a little surprised when the electrospectrometer on one of the Mars rovers picked up the mineral hematite on Mars, which would suggest that at some point there was water flowing on the planet Mars, which is now this vast, freezing, arid, dry, desert-like environment, right? And it was really shocking. Nobody expected to find hematite on Mars. It was a really profound finding that had a profound impact on the scientific community. And the only reason I say that is because we're constantly surprised, aren't we? Whether it's hematite on Mars, or whether it's a new vaccine that's developed, or whether it's a new cave system that's discovered, and we find more and more stuff that we didn't know about before. All that to say that I don't know that there's ever going to be a point where we know everything. I don't know that there's ever going to be a point when we're in control of everything. You know, you think about some of the recent things that have happened in the world. I think especially about the tremendous acts of violence, whether it's the war in Ukraine or whether it's the mass shootings that have occurred all around the country here. You just think about all the things that are outside of your control. And it's a little scary, isn't it? Not only that, but you think about things like cancer. You think about death itself and the fact that we still don't really have a solution for it. We don't really have a cure for it. There are so many things in the world we still don't know about, so many things in the universe we still don't know about. There are so many questions that have not been answered. There are so many things that we don't have a handle over, right? When a tornado comes, what do? We take cover. Why? Because we can't control it. There's only so much that is within human capability. And of course, that human capability evolves over time as technologies develop, as people work together. But I don't know that we'll ever have a hold on everything. And these ideas of omniscience and omnipotence, these are qualities of the divine, aren't they? Qualities that humans do not have. And that's just it. Humans, in many ways, have tried to become their own gods, and I think many believe they are. But ultimately, the human quest for divinity has failed. That leads us to the text we're going to be talking about today. I know that was kind of the long way around to that. But Genesis chapter 11. We're going to be talking about Genesis chapter 11 today. This is a story known as the Tower of Babel. I want to read this to you. We're going to read verses 1 through 9. So Genesis 11, starting in verse 1. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. So let's kind of go through what happened there. You start off in the beginning. It says that you had one people who all spoke one language together. Now, this isn't particularly surprising, especially when you backtrack the narrative a little bit. At the end of, throughout chapter 9, actually, you had this genealogy running from Noah and then his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and you see that everybody is descended from that same line, right? So it's not really surprising that you have all these different people from one background. And they all speak one language. And it mentions that there's this group of people migrating from east to west, and as they do so, they see this opportunity for a settlement in the plains of Shinar. Now, some people have disputed where this might be. Some people have said it's in the region of what would become known as Babylon and eastern side of Mesopotamia. Some people say it's the more northern side of Mesopotamia in what would later become known as Syria. There's not really a consensus on this, but it's not really that significant to the story. What is significant is that the writer tries to give a geographical location. We'll come back to that in a second. So in the plains of Shinar, they build this city and they're going to build a tower, right? And this tower is supposed to be a tower built into the heavens, it says. Now, this was probably some sort of pyramid-like structure. And the big question here is, what is their motivation? Why exactly are they trying to build anything into the heavens? Are they trying to, do they just want to be with God? Do they just want that fellowship with God and want to be with Him? Or is it something different, something more nefarious perhaps? And we see their motives. It actually tells us there, it tells us, let us make a name for ourselves. That's their purpose. They want to make a name for ourselves. They want to leave behind their legacy, and they want everybody else to know that they are the ones in power, right? Be afraid. This is what we're capable of. We've got technology. We've got people able to work together. So God comes down and looks at the city. He looks at the tower, and almost out of this fear of human hyper-independence, he decides to confuse their language. So he confuses their language. And suddenly they can't understand each other. They can't work together. And they kind of sort themselves out to these individual groups who can understand each other, and they kind of start going their own way from there. Okay? So there are a few important points to make here when we look at the story broadly. The first point to make is that this is so much more than a pourquoi story. A pourquoi story, this is also called an etiological tale. That's when you have a story after the fact that's meant to explain how something came to be. So how the tiger got its stripes, right? And it'll tell some little tale about how the gods got some pain on them, or it's the tears of, some kind of typically outlandish explanation of how something came to be. And some people have looked at the story of the Tower of Babel and they say, look, this is actually just a convenient way of explaining these two seemingly conflicting ideas of single source ancestry, right? We all come from Noah. And also recognizing the tremendous diversity that exists within humankind. It's just a convenient way of explaining that. And here's what I would say to that. First of all, there's no indication in the story that this is fictitious. There's no indication that the author is trying to convey a fictitious story. In fact, if anything, it seems like he's trying to ground it in reality. He makes a specific mention of the plains of Shinar. Now, like I said before, we don't necessarily know where these were, but that's not exactly the point. The people back in the day when Genesis was written presumably would have known where this was. This would have been something that people knew about and had heard about. And what the author is trying to do when he mentions that is he's trying to ground it in reality and tell them, look, this is something that really happened. So there's no suggestion here that this is fictitious in any way. I would also say that the primary purpose of the passage is not to explain how things got to be the way they are. The primary purpose of the Tower of Babel story is to solidify humanity's place within God's creation, right? That's what's happening in Genesis 1 through 10, isn't it? It's this big exploration about where does mankind belong in this relationship between God and mankind and all of creation. Where does mankind fall in the mix of all of it? Which brings us to the second point. Humanity is by nature under God. Humanity is by nature under God. We are not equal to God. We are not on the same level as God. We are not worthy of glory and honor and praise in the same way that God is. Now, this is something, again, that's investigated all throughout the creation narrative in Genesis 1 through 11, right? Because back in chapter 1, verse 26, we see that mankind is made in the image of God. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. In verse 28, mankind is given a special kind of authority over creation, albeit a limited authority, but a very special kind of authority. Let him have dominion over the birds of the air and over the beasts of the field and over the things that creep on the ground and everything and all creation. So mankind is given this very special and unique place in creation. But I think God knew that we have a tendency to kind of drag that too far. And so he checks us a little bit, right? And in Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve disobey God's command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, God punishes them, right? He kicks them out of the garden. He pushes them away and out of his presence. And then in Genesis 6 through 9, you have the flood narrative in which humanity is judged because they are not following God's design. And only Noah and his family survive, right? So over and over throughout the creation narrative, you have these reminders that, yes, mankind is in this special, unique place. We have free will. We have this special authority granted to us, but we're still subject to God's authority. And Genesis 11 is sort of nail in the coffin, right? It's sort of that one last reminder in the creation narrative of where mankind belongs, because mankind is starting to believe that they can do everything. They are starting to believe, or at least they would have the illusion, that they don't need God anymore. That's what was happening, wasn't it? In fact, that's what God was worried about in verse 6. God says, nothing will be impossible for them. It would have given them the illusion they don't need God anymore. In reality, they did, right? The whole time they really did need God. But this idea that they would become like us, this idea that they would think they were like us and think that they were equal to us in power, that was a threat to the order of creation. So God confuses their language. This served as a very humbling reminder, I imagine. And I think reminded them in many ways that they need God. This is similar to what happens to Israel, by the way, when they're wandering through the wilderness and every single day they have to wake up and hope that God fulfills his promise and puts manna on the ground every single morning. You can read this, by the way, in Exodus and in Numbers. Manna every single morning was on the ground. And you know what happened at the end of every day? They had nothing left. They got just enough for that day, and they had to go to sleep that night just trusting that God was going to provide, because otherwise they were in this desert. There was nothing around them other than what God would provide. So they had to learn to be dependent on God. They had to learn. That was a way of training Israel and showing them their constant need for God. And I think that's kind of what happened here in Babel. He makes them go their separate ways and makes it to where they're not able to accomplish everything themselves, so that they realize and remember their dependence on him. Do you think that ever happens to us in our lives? God moves something around in our lives to remind us, you still need me, Remember, I'm still here. You still need me. You still need help. You can't do it all on your own, right? I think people need to hear that message today. You know, there are people in the world. Richard Dawkins has been a big proponent of this idea. He's been a big supporter of the whole God is dead movement. He wrote the book, The God Delusion. And one of his primary arguments is that humanity has evolved to the point where we don't need God anymore. It's not just he has arguments against the existence of God, this and that. He believes that humanity has gotten to the point where we don't need an all-powerful creator. We don't need that kind of explanation, and we don't need that kind of help. We can do it all on our own. And I think the argument against that is pretty basic and straightforward. Look around you. Does it look like we need help? Doesn't it? Right? The world seems to be falling apart around us. I don't know that this whole let's do it all ourselves experiment is working out too well. Don't we need God? Don't we need the hope of something better? Don't we need Jesus to come back into the world to judge the living and the dead and to restore earth back to what it should have been in the beginning? I think so. People need to hear that message today, that they're not God, that there is a higher power out there. It's actually the second step in the 12-step process, right? People struggling with addiction. One of the biggest steps that leads to change is recognizing that there is a higher power out there that is in control of things that you cannot control. In fact, I want to go to we'll go to that passage in just a minute, actually. Let me get to something else here. The third point that I'd like to convey is that humanity is really capable of incredible things. Like I mentioned earlier, going to the Air Force Museum, you look around you at the technologies that are developed, whether it's vaccines or aviation technology or anything. It really is incredible what humans are able to do together. But we need to make sure that what we're doing and what we're building is God-glorifying and not self-glorifying. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, and this is starting in verse 10. According to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, and someone else is building upon it. Let each one take care how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, we'll stop there. So no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ, right? Make sure that what you're building is on the right foundation and that it's for the right purposes, right? Again, that was the problem in Babel. Because you look at verse 6, their motives were wrong. They were building for the wrong reasons. It had nothing to do with glorifying God. It had to do with... Oh, sorry. I told you the wrong verse. Verse 4. My bad. Verse 4. Let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. So the question really comes down to, are you doing things in order to make a name for yourself, or are you doing things to point people towards God? Right? Does that change, do you think, the way we spend our money, the way we think about the homes or the cars that we drive? Do you think that changes the way we build our homes, we build our families? I would think so. I would hope so. Do you think it changes the way that we build the church, right? Is the church that we're working towards, is the church we're trying to form, this is really important to me as a church leader, is the church we're trying to build and form, or rather, the church we're helping God build and form, is that church something that is God-glorifying or self-glorifying? And we need to make sure we have the right motivations and that we're operating on the right motivations. The central message, all of it really comes down to what was said in Colossians 3:17. In whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, giving thanks to God the Father. And all you do, in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord. You want to make sure that everything that you're doing is not bringing attention to yourself, right? I always describe it like this. You don't want to be pointing inwards saying, look at me, look at me. You're always pointing upwards saying, look at what God has done. Look at what God is able to do. Look at what he is going to do, right? So my prayer is that humanity rediscovers its need for God as a society and individually. And I suspect that as the world, in a way, continues to descend into more and more chaos, I hope that people will be able to see that more clearly, that this whole do-it-ourselves experiment, it doesn't work. We need God. And that's the basic message of this entire lesson today. You need God. Our society needs God. You need God personally, and none of it's going to work out until we trust God to do it. Now, that's one of the big lies of politics, isn't it? Politicians come along and they say, I can fix everything. I can do it all myself. If you elect me, I will fix this, and I will fix that, and I will fix that. What happens every time? It's not fixed. The world doesn't need more politicians. The world needs Jesus. That concludes what we're going to cover in the lesson today. Next week, we're going to go off in kind of a different route. We've got something really exciting for you in a couple weeks. I'll tell you about that next week, though. But for now, we want to remind you about the resources we have available here at the close of the show. We have a Bible correspondence course that I know some of you have participated in already. If you haven't, though, you can see those up on the screen there. It's a series of 7 different workbooks, and really they are tools to help you get into learning how to study the Bible yourself. It orients you to the basic story of the Bible, and it's just a really good tool. If you don't have a Bible to do that or to follow along with the show, we offer that to you as well, totally free of charge. It's a hardcover ESV Bible. That's the same translation we use on the show. We have it both in normal print and in large print for those who might need it. And if you need any of those resources, the contact info is there up on the screen. You can reach us by mail at the Marquette Church of Christ, P.O. Box 372. That's in Marquette, Michigan, 49855. You can also find a lot of information on our website, letthebiblespeak.net. It's got a lot of contact information. It's also got information on our service and worship times for the local churches here in the UP. You can also listen to us on our podcast. You just have to search Let the Bible Speak UP, and you can find that on either Podbean or Spotify. I want to thank you once again for joining us on our journey together today. Hope to see you next week as we continue to let the Bible speak.
The Father's glory blaze, Spirit blaze, set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow, flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send